Hi, hi, Nana. Oh my God,
Hi,
finally nice to meet you.
hi, Amin. Really good to meet you too. Hi, everybody. How you all doing?
Oh, everybody's shy all of a sudden. Wow. Okay. Okay. Let me get myself together. So I wrote a very lovely intro that I want to go through. All right. Welcome everybody to the April Indulgent Bibliophile Book Chat. Today with us we have Nana Darkoa, and she's a Ghanaian writer, public speaker, and feminist activist working as Director of Communications and Media for the Association of Women's Rights in Development. With
I have
Malak,
left you with. I
you
have
have
left.
left.
Yes.
Hey, God, oh. Somebody should pay me. Let me update your Wikipedia page. Okay. Um. So you left now. So you're on your own now.
I'm on my
Oh,
own. Yes.
okay. Okay. All right. So with Malaka Grant, Nana co-founded the award-winning blog Adventures from the Bedrooms of African Women as a space to focus on sex, sexualities, and African women. Her first book, The Sex Lives of African Women, is the reason we're here to chat today. The Sex Lives of African Women comprises over 30 confessionals from a diverse range of women across the continent and its global diaspora. It's an intersectional exploration of relationships, sexuality, and love that is at once honest, brave, liberating, and deeply moving. This work is the result of 5 years of research by the author and stems from her award-winning blog, Adventures from the Bedrooms of African Women. It's so lovely to finally be talking to you. So let's just dive right into it because I know you are traveling, so internet might be a little bit shaky. Could you tell us how the book came to be, the journey,
Yeah.
5 years journey?
Yes. Well, I wanted to write a book, and it was like,
Mm.
what should I write about? I'd write about sex. I've been blogging about sex since 2009. But I also knew from my blog that there were so many stories about African women's experiences of sex and sexuality that never made it into the mainstream. And I felt like when it came to the mainstream, our sexuality was portrayed in very limited ways, often in very negative ways, particularly with Western mainstream media. We were either, women who had experienced FGM and had no pleasure in their lives, or were women who were constantly pregnant, or were women who lived with HIV and AIDS. And I felt like, yes, that may be part of the story, but it definitely wasn't the full story. And I felt like our more fun, exciting stories never made it to the mainstream. And I just wanted to interview women from my initial utopian dream was every country on the continent, and put it in the form of a book. So that's how the sex lives of African women came into being.
Okay. So how did you choose the women that were interviewed? Did you put out the call on social media? Did you invite people from the blog who had shared their stories? How was the casting?
I love that you describe it as casting. I did it in a variety of ways. The very first person I interviewed was a woman that I named Baba in the book. And she had basically slid into my DMs and was asking me questions about sexuality because she was like, I'm not sure, am I bi-curious? Am I lesbian? Am I straight? So we just started to have a conversation in the DMs. And by then I'd already had the idea for the book. And so I said to her, I'm going to be writing a book about the sex lives of African women. Can I interview you? And she said, yes. And then in those days, it was obviously pre-pandemic. I used to travel quite a lot for my job. So every time I went to a new place, I would just find somebody to interview, whether I traveled for work or whether I was there on holiday. So in the very beginning, I think I just had a sense of the people who I felt maybe they lived interesting lives, or they seemed open. And I just say to people, I'm writing a book, can I interview you? Invariably, the answer was yes. When I was on holiday in Sao Tome, I said to the tour guide, do you know any Sao Tomean woman who I could interview for my book? He said, yes, I have a friend. He brought her to the hotel. I interviewed her. But then especially once the pandemic hit and we were all grounded, I did a lot of call outs on social media. I did call outs on my blog. Titsi in particular, I reached out to because she had shared a number of stories on my blog. and I wanted to include the experiences of a woman living with HIV. And somehow I thought she was from Uganda. I didn't know why. And I knew I hadn't interviewed anybody from Uganda. So I reached out to her, found out she was from Zimbabwe. I was like, damn, I've interviewed somebody from Zimbabwe, but then, I couldn't like back out of the interview. So yeah, a variety of ways.
Interesting. So how did you, okay, you interviewed them. The process was interviewing them and then writing their answers and curating it. But like, how much editing did you have to do for each of the stories?
So I don't think of it as curating. I think of it as writing their story. Okay. Because I would interview somebody and I'll decide what the story was based on the conversation that we had, right? Because obviously you can have like a long ranging conversation going over like many topics. And there's some people who I interviewed multiple times. So part of my process was to transcribe each interview. Okay. And transcription is a very painful process, but it was also really helpful because, I have to listen to the conversation again. And then listening to the conversation again and then like getting the transcript correct, somehow the story would come to me. I'll be like, oh, this is the real story in this person's experience, right? And then I would write the story. Yeah.
Okay. You've been writing and talking about sex for a long time now. Was there any new to you information about sex that you learned through the process of interviewing the woman? Was that anything that shocked you or surprised you?
I feel like my own biases were shown to me many, many, many times, So when I was interviewing Elizabeth, for example, Elizabeth is a Nigerian Scottish woman who lives in the UK. And she was speaking about, trying to figure out the right moment to let people that she's like chatting to online know that she uses a wheelchair. I was just like, oh my goodness, I have never dated anybody who has a wheelchair or never slept with anyone who uses a wheelchair, right? Like, how come? Like, what does this say about me, right? Also, when I was interviewing Waris, for example, and she was talking about and describing a pleasurable sexual experience, I was just like mind blown because I kind of had assumed any woman who had experienced FGM wouldn't experience pleasure sexually. So I felt like a lot of my own myths and misconceptions were being blown away throughout the process.
Fascinating. I enjoyed that the book opened my mind to stories I'd heard about like privately with friends. I didn't know like older. I mean, in my head, in my ideal world, I know yes, older women, are having sex, but like I've not thought of it. I've not even read erotica that featured older women. So reading, hey God, what's her name? Oh Jesus,
Alexis or Fatu.
Yes, reading their stories, I was like, wow, that is so nice, because we know how they're always saying after menopause, like everything just dips. And those of us who are not menopause, or we go to church or the mosque or around us, you see middle-aged women and you are looking at them like, can this auntie actually and sometimes I just let my imagination run wild, which is a little pervy because that's me imagining strangers having sex. But I loved that this book opened my mind to that, to have to be, I think, to keep it at the back of my head that things are happening and you are just here sitting down inside your room. You don't know what's going on. Like, things are actually happening. So I was very grateful that this book gave me the opportunity to do that. Now, in your opinion, and well, all your research and life's work, what do you think shapes our views of sex and relationship most? Is it the environment, past experiences, the media, family, or something else?
I think it's a lot of things, right? I think it's society. For a lot of people, it's how they're raised within their families, what they are told or very often not told about sex shapes what they think about sex. It could also be religion, where they're explicitly told, for example, you can't have sex until you're married. Sex before you're married is bad. Sex should only be between a man and a woman. It's also reinforced through like the culture we consume, right? The TV, especially TV, never shows older women as having sex, right? I think it's part of why we all think somehow older women just don't have sex. Older people are not seen as sexually desirable. So I feel like basically our entire environment, informs us and gives us particular notions and ideas about sex.
Okay. I want to ask. Oh, someone just Omolola just asked. Were people open without the cover of anonymity? Were they free to talk?
Yes, people were very free to talk for a couple of reasons. I think the fact that I've been blogging about sex for a long time gave people a certain degree of confidence in me. I would also say to people, you can choose to use your real name, you can choose to be anonymous. You don't have to decide that right now. For the most part, I didn't want people to make the decision before the interview, whether they wanted to be open or anonymous, because I didn't want them to feel limited in what they had to share. I wanted them to share, from their heart and then decide, have I shared too much? Like, do I want to use my real name or not? And I'll also say to people, like, you don't even have to decide on the same day that we've had the interview. Some people decided to use their real name and later came back to me and said, we want to use a pseudonym. That was fine with me. I was more interested in the story and staying true. Like, I tried to name people based on their regions because I wanted people to get a sense of like their country and culture. I was more interested in that than people having to use their real name. I mean, at the end of the day, I recognize that there are real consequences to being open about sex, right? Like, we can't pretend that there are not consequences to speaking openly about sex, even in this day and age. And I know that I have a lot of privilege that allows me to do what I do. Other people may not necessarily have the same privilege. Like for over 15 years, I've worked for feminist organizations. A feminist organization is not likely to sack you because you're writing about sex. But if you worked in the bank, for example, that will be a totally different issue. So I didn't want to judge people for, using their name or not using their name. Some people also wanted to protect people they were talking about, right? So it wasn't even about them. It was about the people in their life. So the person who changed their mind about using their name, it was about this person they'd really spoken about. And it was like, oh, if people realize it's me, they'll all know it's this person, this woman that I was talking about having this relationship with. And it's like, well, it's not fair for me to put her in that position.
Okay. So it's book club. So I'm going to ask the rest of us questions since we have Nana here. This is to everyone. Why do you think we have such a difficult or uncomfortable time talking about women's desires and women's bodies, even today that we're now supposedly open? Does anybody want to go first? Oh, I see a hand up. Omolola.
I think, and this is a very simplified answer. I think especially African women, we still don't own our own bodies. It's very simple. It's more complex than we have time to get into, but just we're not in control. We don't have our own agency when it comes to our bodies. We are seen by the men in our lives, whether it be fathers, brothers, partners, even people who know nothing about you, as a commodity. Your body is a commodity. It's a bargaining tool. It's your cost price, to put it plainly. And that is why we speak about even our sexuality in light of men. We don't talk about, we do. A woman dresses up, she's dressing for men. And it's women saying these things. So we're so programmed. And yeah, things have loosened up a bit, but there's still that mindset. We don't have our own agency when it comes to our bodies. Because men will never say you're dressing for women. You're just dressing to look good. That guy looks good. He's dressing because he wants to look good. But a woman is not dressing because she wants to look good. She's dressing to attract men. That's very simple, but complex answer.
Well, Millie just said one word: patriarchy. The patriarchy will not allow us to be great. Yes. Even in the moment you're thinking, like, even in the moment of the sex, trying to be sexually liberated. I think they've used that, they've spelled that word in a case that if somebody says, I don't want to have sex with you, but I thought you were sexually liberated. Like I've had a friend who was told that because she said she didn't, and she was like, yeah, it's just you're not doing anything for me. And the person took it personal. And then again, we still have to be kind in saying this kind of, I hate that we have to be kind in saying this kind of things, but hey, all right. So yeah. Anybody else? Bukola?
Yes, I mean, I
Yes.
totally agree with Millie and Omolola, so I won't belabor that point. The other reason I think we find it difficult to talk about, women and sex, and it's because I think we start out with it being really an emotional thing. It's not just a physical thing, it's an emotional thing as well. So even so, as you said, someone said she's sexually liberated doesn't mean it's everybody that does it for her. There's still something else that's linked with it. And I don't think we talk freely about our emotions in all areas. There's some things we feel we can talk about, but there's some things we can't, we don't feel free to talk about. And I think when you're in a relationship, either married or in a committed relationship, it's also that thing about hurting the other person. So if you're not being pleased, it's almost as if they take it personal, So why don't we talk about it? It's like, okay, it's like talking about it. How does that make the other person? So if I go to someone and say, oh, I just want to talk about my sex life, I'm not satisfied. The person I'm talking to immediately thinks, because I'm married, I have a husband, oh, your husband is not satisfying you. Sure, you understand that? So it's almost as if you're trying to protect the other person. And I'm not, so I think sometimes that's what stops us from talking about it, because there's someone else involved, there are emotions involved. You don't want to hurt somebody. And also, if you're like in a relationship with someone, even if it's just that you're going out, you're not married, you may not have even given it a title, but you're committed to one person, that's the same person, and then you feel attracted to someone else. Talking about it, I don't know. I'm reading through this book, maybe I'm just different, but I think a lot of people, as soon as we start talking, they feel hurt that, oh, okay, you're interested in someone else now. I don't know. So I think that's one of, not even out there you, it's more like feeling hurt rather than annoyed. Well, anger comes in as well.
Yeah.
But I think that even links more with the patriarchy, because if you feel you own somebody, then it's like, how can you, this is not even saying you want to act on it, but to be able to talk about it or automatically just brings up that wall and that anger and that hurt. And sometimes because you don't want to do that, you just don't talk about it. I think that's another part of it.
Okay, Natasha, she wrote that religion has played a big part in teaching. Yeah, it has. In teaching purity culture and sex being something reserved for your husband. It's rarely taught that women should derive pleasure from sex. It should be for procreation. I agree. I mean, I didn't get sex education from my mom, even though my mom believes she's liberal. I didn't get sex education from my mom. I just I learned on the job, if I can put it that way. There was no training whatsoever from my mom. And it's a case of, when you're a teenager, stay away from boys. If they touch you, you get pregnant, blah, 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 blah. And then you get to one age. Where are you going? Are you not going to get married? Are you not going to find husband? And it's like, how do you want me to jump from being this mute person who cannot even talk to boys to somebody who's like, oh, I'm ready to get married? Like, there's so much. I don't know how I hope there's still a lot to be done in that aspect. And okay, I ask this question sometimes with friends who have children, and they always like make it hush hush, not something to be talked about. When do you start sex education with your children? Especially now that, once you open Instagram, you're already seeing something funny. Like, when do you start to protect them and also to, educate them? What do you think is the right age? This question is to everybody, by the way.
If I can jump in.
Okay.
I think you just start really early with teaching children the proper names for their body parts, right? My daughter is 2, and she knows breast and tummy. So every time I take off my clothes, she's like, breast, tummy, big tummy. I think that's the way you start, by making them feel comfortable about like their own body and your body, right? And I also know that whenever they ask you a question, you should answer, and like just tell them what the honest answer is. One of the things, obviously, I realized from doing this book is how early children are sexually abused. And when parents think they're protecting their children by not telling them about sex, they rather, I think, leaving them more vulnerable. So I think children need to be educated about sex as early as possible, and doesn't have to be in a complicated way. It's just by answering the questions they have, you know, knowing their body parts, knowing what's like it's their own, and nobody should be doing anything to them without their consent, you know. I recognize it's a difficult subject, but the other thing that I also recognize is that children also have a sexuality of their own, right? So I think also people need to think about how they have those conversations with their children.
The earlier, the better.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm very strong on the proper names part, because I don't want anybody saying my cookie or my special plate. So yeah, the earlier the better. The earlier the better. All right. Okay, I have a question for you, Nana. There's a lot of judging and projecting one's needs onto other people. So how would you say judgment factor how would you say judgment factors into letting ourselves go to even like think of desiring something before even acting on it, like allowing yourself to even entertain an idea, like let it play around in your head? How do you think? I don't know if I asked that question. Did I make sense? Should I ask it again?
No, let me just say how I'm hearing the question, right?
Okay.
And you can let me know if I'm understanding it correctly. Because people are fearful of being judged, they may not be able to be open and honest about their desires, right? Is that the question?
Yes.
Like,
yes.
How do you deal with that? Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a real challenge, you know. But I also recognize that really you'll be judged no matter what you do.
True.
And so I think you just have to kind of find a way to speak to what you desire. And I think speaking doesn't always have to be like with your mouth, right? So for example, with a new partner, I like to text what I want to be done to me. Like, it's easy for me to text things, much easier than speaking to it. And then they have still said what I want, right? Or you can ask them like, what do you like to be done to you in bed? So that they can turn around and also ask you, what would you like to be done to you in bed? So I think there are many ways of having a conversation, and you have to find the way that works for you. And also remember that people will judge you regardless, you know. You kind of just have to figure out a way not to let it bother you. And also sometimes I think our fears do not necessarily come true. I think our fears are often bigger than what happens in reality. So you may be really, really worried about people judging you and nobody really paying any attention to you.
Damn. Okay. Before the book came out, were you worried about what other writers might think? Like, it's your first debut, oh, she's writing about sex, she's the one doing the sex book. Did you have any fear before publication day?
No fear whatsoever.
Energy.
The only thing I was a little bit worried about is how the women themselves like feel about their stories, right? Because I interviewed them, and interviewed some of them many years ago.
Okay, did they get to read them before?
No, they didn't get to read it.
Okay.
It was very deliberate. I didn't want anybody to influence what I'd written. So that was my only slight fear. Like, at the same time, I knew I had recorded every conversation. So more or less I had receipts. You know, everybody knew it was going to be a book. So it was no surprise. But yeah, it's been really, really nice to hear from the women I've heard from so far. I've kept in touch with most of them. You know, it's been extremely positive. There's one woman who said to me, in a future edition of the book, you can use my real name. So the UK paperback will come out in July. You know, for one person, I'm changing to use her real name now. There was one person who was just like, oh my God, I read it. And I was like, oh my God, I told you so many things. Why didn't I use a pseudonym, but I'm fine with it. One person, because I'm in Kenya right now, Philista, who's a sex worker, she was like, Nana, I have so many clients now because of this work. Bookshops have been inviting me to give talks. The sex workers are so happy. They're always like, we're in a book, so actually the feedback on the woman have been extremely positive. That was my one single fear, that people would be like, maybe you didn't tell my story accurately, or yeah. Somebody was like, oh, you mentioned, like you maybe you referred to this particular boyfriend, but you mixed up the name or something like that. I mean, nothing major. Also, everybody's like, all the other people, I changed their names. So nothing major. It's been mainly positive, which has been a huge relief. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Let's see.
I mean, I'd also like to hear from people about, how they've received the book, how they feel about the book.
I was just about to throw it to them in the house. So, everybody, this is where we share our thoughts on the book. What were some more surprising aspects of the book? Did you learn anything new? Did it have you view any aspect of desire or sex and sexuality differently? How did the book make you feel? Okay, Millie, shoot.
Hi, Nana. Mine is just to say thank you for the book. I loved it. I loved every aspect of it. There's so many terminologies out there that I've come across just in day-to-day life that I have no idea what they mean. Where do we even go to start to understand these things? And I feel like this book provided sort of like a condensed, not a dictionary, but a condensed way for me to read somebody's story, Google a particular word and understand, okay, so that's what this means. So that was very useful to me. I also just love the diversity of the stories, the honesty of the women. I mean, I could go on forever, but I won't. Maybe I should ask you a quick question.
Yeah.
Is that okay? I mean,
yeah, of course.
So these women, there's a freedom section, there's a healing section, and what was the other one?
Self-discovery.
Self-discovery. I just wanted to ask about happiness, as cliche as that word is. Were you able to get a sense from interviewing these women about whether their happiness levels have increased because they have come to some kind of resolution about their honest, true sexuality?
That's a great question. I mean, firstly, Millie, thank you for the feedback. Yeah, it means a lot to me. But yeah, I mean, I definitely feel like people who have been able to figure out their sexuality and who are able to live true to themselves are happier than people who have not. It felt to me like definitely the woman that I placed in the freedom section, for the most part, I would say a woman who I got the sense that they felt happy and fulfilled in their lives. Yeah. Yeah, but I like that question. I hadn't thought about it from a happiness angle, but it's obviously super, super important. I think also lots of people on the self-discovery journey are also extremely happy, right? And even with healing, and that if somebody's in healing section and maybe there's like traumatized or something, doesn't necessarily mean they are unhappy. There's some people who, like someone like Shanita, I placed in the healing section because, that whole 100 days of celibacy, which became like 1,000 days, was all about just trying to figure out, why are all my relationships not working? How can I be true to myself? How can I get to know myself? So I think going through the process of healing also brings happiness. And for some people, they were speaking to me about traumatic experiences that they had never spoken to anybody about, which I also feel like it's a start of a healing journey, being able to speak to a difficult experience that you've had. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else wants to share comments on the book? Me, if I talk, I'm just going to be gushing. So that's why I want you to do the talking. We already know how I feel about the book.
Yeah, I can jump in.
Okay.
I haven't, full disclosure, I'm still reading it. I only got it recently. But so far I've been really enjoying it. And I was really struck by the opening story because I had talked to someone about the book. So I used to actually work with Nana up until recently. And I was talking to one of our colleagues about the book, Joanne, and she mentioned the opening story being surprising to her. And it's funny because I had recently read a book called Changes, a love story by Ama Ataidu. I don't know if anyone has read it, but I remember reading that book and thinking, I wonder if there's anyone that actually has done this, like chosen to enter a polygamous marriage and not necessarily by virtue of like religion or culture, and how that is a form of like self-discovery and openness that I kind of honestly had to confront my biases about, because you usually think it's like that situation is really so much more based on the man, and like, you know, you're in that because it's your culture, it's your religion. Maybe when you grow up with it, and so you're taught that that's what you're supposed to expect. But being a person that chose to enter that like freely, and also obviously converted her religion, I thought that was such an interesting way to start the book, and also very gripping. So I actually wanted to ask Nana as well, like, what the decision to start with that story, because I feel like it's you know, pretty distinct. Yeah, so that's a question to you, but so far I've really been enjoying it.
Thank you so much, Marie. Yeah, and I think that's exactly why I started it, because I also had not expected a woman who, in many ways, you know, it's like me, well-traveled, educated, has options to choose to become the third wife of another man. I was just like, what? You know, and I think for me, it struck me even more because I actually come from a polygamous marriage. My mom is my dad's second wife. And for me, somehow, it's just never seemed like a valid relationship structure for a contemporary woman. So I think it was also, again, showing me my own biases, right? That whole assumption that also somebody who's chosen to be in a second marriage is maybe a little bit passive, even though, again, in my own life, I know that not to be true of my mother. And I think there are ways for people to navigate, yeah, even polygamous marriage and still have a lot more freedom than people in traditional monogamous marriages. And so, yeah, I liked it, and I wanted to start the book with that because I feel like on one hand, you may think, oh, polygamy, that's a typical African story, but no, it's not, especially in this day and age, right? And I think I also wanted to show that, you know what, different forms of relationships are valid. It depends on the people and what works for them, you know, and maybe a part of me thinks we verify monogamous marriages. And I don't necessarily think monogamous marriages are better than polyamorous marriages or polygamous marriages. I think it really depends upon the people and what works for them. Yeah.
Thank you. Omolola.
Hi, Nana. Thank you for writing the book. And I want to piggyback off the conversation we're having right now about polygamy and starting the book with Nura's story, which also was very interesting. And I quite, of all the, I haven't finished, but of all the stories I've read, I like this one the best. And so I'm in my 40s now. And when I was younger, I have a friend, she became the third wife, but very young, 20 something, and she comes from the northern part of Nigeria, and she went into this eyes wide open. It was a conscious decision for her. She had known this man pretty much her whole life, and she liked him and she wanted to, but we could not understand it. We're now in our 40s, marriages are crashing, and I've bought this book for my friends as well, and you know, some of them are not married. Relationships are different. People are having affairs. And a statement was made one day, we were having a conversation, that if Africans had been left alone and religion and the West had not come to us, what would our societies be like? Would we be this society where the Christian church legalese is dictating one man, one wife outside of other traditional relationships? Would we be so hung up on that, where you have people making it work? You know, men who are mature enough to balance polygamous marriages and everyone seemingly living in harmony. So as Amin said, you weren't here, but this book is really a conversation starter. And for that, I'm really, really thankful that it exists. My friends and I are talking much more about our sexuality. When we were younger, it was a taboo. You didn't want to be seen as loose, but everybody was having sex. You didn't want to be seen as loose, but now we are in I don't care mode. Things have happened, and we're starting to see that we should have not be promiscuous, but I mean, and even that again is good girl syndrome. But but then we, as in, maybe if we had had a little more, as I call it, agency or freedom to move, some people would not have made the decisions of partners that they made. You didn't explore enough to know who you were compatible with, and then now you have things happening, and not because not because there was an affair or anything. You just realize that this is not the person you are supposed to be with, but just because you were in this mold and this was the right thing to do, marry at this age, so that you can have children quickly. So it's such a conversation starter. And I had asked, what we had agreed that there was a conversation of how much interpretation was given there. Not that these stories are unbelievable, but sometimes I was just like, okay, okay, right. Yes. But yeah, it's sort of like a breath of fresh air to be able to sit and talk. So I felt that I could have been in the room during just a conversation, nothing taboo. So so I look at this book as nothing taboo. That's what I wanted to actually say. This being even if you were nervous before the book came out, for me, when I heard it was coming out, I was excited because there's nothing taboo for me now. I've had friends say, look, I'm over 40, nothing can happen at this point. I've lived XYZ life, the future, whatever happens, hey, we're going to chest it. And I have my own money. I can do nobody can tell me what to do anymore. And that's the attitude I get from this book. Hey.
Bukola, your hand is up.
Yes, my hand is up. Thank you again, Nana, for this book. I think it's a very important book, and I dealt with a lot of biases as well. It helped me open my eyes to a lot of things. So the only thing is that I put my hand up when you started talking about monogamy and things like that. Did you make a deliberate effort? And I actually spoke about this before you joined, but did you make a deliberate effort not to include it? And I know that everybody, I think someone said that, well, we know about monogamy, one wife, one woman and all that, but do we really though? Because I know there are a lot of people that are in marriages that are not happy, or they're happy in other things, happy with their children, happy with the family life, but when it comes to sex, they are just settling. But there's some people that are married to one man, one woman in a monogamous relationship and have a great sex life. So I think there's still discussions around there as well. So when you were writing this book, was it a deliberate effort? Because in all fairness, when I saw the title, The Sex Lives of African Women, I thought I would see all sorts in it. And I did see all sorts, but I wondered, personally, I thought maybe there'll be a bit more of a balance. So it's like trying to, and I referred it, when I was talking earlier, I compared it to Girl, Woman, Other by Bernardine Evaristo, which I really thoroughly enjoyed as well. But I think it's like in the bid to try and tell the story of people that are othered, we exclude people that people consider, and I hate using this word, but we eliminate, we remove the people that people think are normal. But I beg to say that actually those people that are in quote unquote normal relationships have a lot of struggles as well.
Of course. Yeah.
It's not as good as the same. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. No, I wasn't trying to not interview people who are monogamous, but you know what? I feel like a lot more people are on a spectrum. And so when they're having a conversation with somebody that can be real and honest, they can tell you how that their sexuality is on a spectrum, but the outside world may read them as monogamous, right? So I also feel like people were telling me about their bi-curiosity, or, you know, like how they really see their sexuality, but that may not necessarily be the face they present to the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
And
wasn't trying to like not interview people who were monogamous, for example. I'm sure there were a couple of people who were monogamous in my book, were they not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
monogamous, but then they were with
They were also exploring.
They were also exploring.
Yes.
So maybe what we're trying to say is that people, and maybe the people that are exploring are the people that are happy to come out and talk. Maybe that's what it is. Because it wasn't as if you were looking deliberately for people. Maybe it's people that are exploring were people that were happy to come out and speak to you. I think that's just in my head. That's what I'm trying to say. That if somebody didn't know anything about African women and said, okay, when I read this book, by the end of this book, I'll get an idea of every kind of African woman. Would they get it from this? And I think that's there. But I think, yeah, maybe it's just people that are exploring that were willing to speak about it. So maybe that's what it is.
That's very possible.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Anime, I don't know if you unmuted because you wanted to say something. Are you there? Can you hear me?
Oh, I'm sorry. I muted.
Okay. Guessing it's a network something. All right. So great. Millie.
Yes, please. Just one more thing about trauma and its perceived, effects on someone's sexuality. You know, there's a lot of perceptions about people who do not conform to the sexual norm. And I think that the way you handled there was a lot of trauma in various stories, right? But I think that the way you handled it, I think you handled it very well, because it would be very challenging for somebody to read the book and say, oh, this one is like this, because this is what happened in their childhood. And I really appreciated that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bella?
Yes, hi everyone.
Hi.
So personally what I genuinely loved this book, because I hadn't Googled it before, so I thought it was fiction. And when I actually got it and I saw stories, I was like, what? This is about real women, like having real encounters. And that gave me so much joy, because I'm from Kenya, grew up in Kenya, and it's very typical like African setup where we don't talk about sex, particularly for women. Sex is a taboo. You're not supposed to enjoy sex. And in like the initial conversation where Amin asked about like why women are not like comfortable like with their bodies in terms of enjoying sex, tying it down to you're generally not allowed to. If you enjoy sex as a woman, you're considered a slut. If a man enjoys sex, he's the man. He's like, but who is he having sex with at the end of the day? That's a good question to ask. If you're going to say a woman is a slut for having sex, but a man he's the man. He's been with a lot of women. So seeing this story, seeing this book, and like I flipped through it to like just reading like the women's experiences. Great to also have like stories from Kenya, because I was like, wow, it's very great to see like women open up to these conversations and spaces where I see women being loved and their needs met. For me, that was just like so mind-blowing. And also just to the moment, like also to like get rid of my own biasness, because I've never like Kenya is predominantly like a Christian, Christian in quotes, like a Christian country, but we do have Muslims. And also seeing stories from Muslim women, because to me, I've never like had a conversation with a Muslim woman where she's talking about her own like sexual experiences. So also having that in the book for me was like, okay, wow, like that's very interesting. That's not a conversation I've thought about it, but I haven't like had a place or a space where I can have this type of conversation. But I genuinely loved like reading about women, like exploring themselves, saying what they want in terms of like having sex, like demanding for what they want. Mothers also talking about their experience. For me, gave me like it was very encouraging and just felt like really, really powerful. So I thank you so much for writing this book.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate that feedback. Thank you.
Okay, so Nana, in your interview with Francesca Ekweyesi, you said you're not going to interview people again, that your next book is going to be a personal one. But I feel like
that's exactly true. Is that what I said?
Yes.
So let me tell you what I plan to do, like in terms of the format for my next book. It'll be a mixture, right? I'm describing it as part African feminist social commentary, part memoir. I will be interviewing people. It's just that I'm not going to present their stories in the same way that I did for this book. I want it to be more narrative, you know, and I include like excerpts and quotes from people that I have interviewed. I just want to experiment with a different format. So please go ahead. And I'm sorry I interrupted.
No, it's fine, because some of us have ideas for, I don't know, Sex Lives Part 2. Because for starters, I do not mind. I have stories. Secondly, women from the north in Nigeria, things are happening. Someone mentioned it in the group chats, in the book club group chats, that they were hoping to see something from northern Nigeria, because I mean, there's a whole industry of women trying to find things to increase sexual pleasure. It's the Kaya Mata industry. And we're hoping to see at least one.
Like, if you know anybody like from northern Nigeria doing that, who is interviewed and interested in speaking to me, please introduce them to me. It's very relevant for my next book.
Okay.
Yes.
Awesome.
Very
awesome.
relevant.
I will get their contacts across to you. Yay.
Thank
so
you.
yeah, well, that I don't have any more questions. Does anybody have any more questions? Because I was just going to gush. I had to put questions down to, okay, I have to ask questions, but I didn't want the fangirling to be to embarrass you. So yeah, I'm very grateful that this book exists. I'm happy that a lot more women will read this book, even though sometimes, you know, based on how we grew up, there's a tendency to, you know, judge. But I'm happy that in the judging, as you read along, you're like, but me, my own life, what am I doing? Like, if I'm going to be judging these people, me, have I orgasm today? No. So I'm glad, for me, that's what I was telling a lot of people. This book opened that kind of conversation, and it's like almost giving ourselves permission again to chat, to talk about these things. Because the more we talk, the more we can enjoy a good life. Like, if you do not talk, you won't get it. They will not give you. Like, I keep reminding one of my friends currently, who keeps giving non-verbal cues to the person that she's currently sleeping with, and the man doesn't seem to be able to read body language, and she's just right now sexually frustrated, and it stresses me out because I'm the one who get the calls, and she's just like upset, and I'm like, do you want me to set up a Zoom call with this man? Like, I will tell him on your behalf if that's what we have to do, because like this cues you are saying, it's not working. So yeah, and she has read this book, so I don't know why she's not, you know, I'm very disappointed because she read this book with me.
It takes time. It takes time.
Okay.
Keep supporting her.
I will do my best. But yeah, so thank you so much for this book, and any book you are going to write, well, going to champion it on top of my head. Already 5 stars. So yeah.
Oh, thank you so much. Really appreciate your support, how you've supported this book, and all the love on social media and everywhere else. It really means a lot to me. And thanks to each and every one of you in the book club. You know, buying the book, sharing it with your friends, it makes a huge difference. Yeah.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Okay, let's not forget our picture. If you have your copy, if you could just raise your copy so we can take pictures if your camera is on.
I'm gonna raise my Kindle because I was coming to the beach. I didn't bring that.
Okay, that's fine. All right. That's 2 pictures. All right. Thank you so much again for joining us.
Thank you. Have a good rest of your evening, everybody. Take care.
Thank you, Nana.
Thanks so
Thank
much.
you.
Bye.
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 All right, people of the Lord.
Bye. 2 thumbs up. Amin.
Alrighty.
Well done.
I said no to the flu today. So we already know what
Well
we're
done,
reading.
Ami. Thank you.
Thank you. We already know
Thank
what we're
you.
reading for May. I posted
Yes.
it on the
Yeah.
Instagram. All right. For
I just
those of
bought it today, actually, when I saw your posts.
okay. For those of us in Nigeria, I know it's hard. I keep apologizing to Nigerian book club members every day because it's like I went to go and be choosing books that for some reason is taking time for book club people for bookstores to stock. But it's available on Script. Forgive me if you don't like ebooks, forgive me, but you know, we gotta do what we gotta do because these stories are nice and I want us to read it. So yeah.
Amin.
Let me ask you.
If we
Sorry, go ahead.
is there a way I'm willing to purchase books bulk and try and send them through a mule, but I'm in the US and sorry, I called human beings a mule, but you know what I mean. I mean, I'm far, so maybe someone in the UK, we can try and help our Nigerian people if that's an option.
Willing
I don't
to
know.
do it.
Okay.
I'm willing
Yeah.
to do it. If we're buying quite a few copies, the cost of posting it will be a lot because it will be heavy.
That's
So
the
if
thing.
anybody knows summer is coming, and
Mm,
the good thing with Amin is that you tell us way ahead of time. We know the books we're reading till later. So if you know someone that's coming, that's happy to take books, I'm happy to buy as many and get them sent to Amin or get them sent somewhere central in Nigeria, and then
okay.
people can pick up. I'm happy
Okay.
to do that. The only thing I was thinking is that if, for example, if I'm buying 10 books and sending them in the post to Nigeria, and apart from the cost, Nigeria Post, there's a book I sent 2 years ago. My cousin still hasn't received it. I had to give her another copy when she came on holiday. Unless somebody knows a reliable, maybe post office or whatever, you know, I don't mind, but I don't, yeah.
Okay.
So I can buy them in the UK. They're easy to get on Amazon. I can buy multiple copies. But I think what would be easier, as Omolola was saying, if somebody's traveling, because I know if you say you're going to the US, you could be going to different parts, and the US is so big. The UK is a small island. Nigerians travel like crazy. So if you know somebody comes to Nigeria that's happy to take things, you know, even if it's like, oh, I can only take 20 books or 10 books or whatever, first come, first serve. I'm happy to do that. Yeah. A book that's particularly difficult to get in Nigeria, if it's easy here. I mean, if I buy it by the next day, I'll get it to my house. It's so annoying that in Nigeria, you know, things that can be so difficult.
do that.
So, yeah. So just bear that in mind. Even if it's short notice, I can still get it. The other thing is that obviously it depends on where the person is. But you know what? Anywhere in the UK, I can even post it to the person. So even if the person is in the UK, but they're far from me, it's easier for me to post it to that person, and then the person can take to Nigeria. So
all right. I'll put the word out in case people want to get copies.
exactly. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, ladies. Thank you,
Alrighty.
Amin. Yeah. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.